برنامج الجسر، وهالمرة في فقرة مؤثرة جدا ومهمة جدا. ضيفي باستوديو هو الأكس سولجر والمخرج والبروديوسر والأكتيفيست انتي وور أكتيفيست راس كابوري. Good evening, Ross.
Hi.
Ross, you are the producer and the film writer, director of the documentary Fear Not the Path of Truth.
That's right.
Okay, tell us a little bit. What is it about?
So I wanted to do two things with this documentary. I wanted to tell the story of Fallujah and what happened there since the U.S.-led occupation of the country and the two sieges that completely destroyed the city, killed thousands of civilians, and then very possibly created one of the most serious public health crises maybe ever, maybe in history. I mean, there's just incredible rates of birth defects and cancers in Fallujah right now, and it's getting no attention. There's almost nothing being done about it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to inform people about this. But I also wanted to tell my own story about being a U.S. Marine as part of the second siege of Fallujah and participating in the destruction of that city.
Right.
And then trying to come to terms with that, trying to look at these hard truths. And
we'll talk more about this personal side of the story, but I'd like to show the trailer of the movie first for our viewers. Okay. Let's take a look.
I was an average American guy in an average American city. And I made the not too uncommon decision of joining the military when my country was at war. But then something I never expected happened to me. I found myself in the middle of the second siege of Fallujah, one of the largest and bloodiest single operations of the occupation of Iraq. My command told us we were fighting against evil.
Is there a flag on your house?
My country told us we were heroes.
And a ribbon on your mailbox with the stars and bars. Do you support the president?
But my conscience told me something different. So I set out in search of the truth.
Marines essentially surrounded the town. They did allow women and children to flee, but locked everyone else in. And then comes the attack, and whoever was killed in their warrants was killed.
It was a massacre.
It's a genocide.
By every standard, it's a major crime.
It fits the definition of genocide very clearly. It's to exterminate in whole or in part a specific group, and it was, Fallujah had to be destroyed.
They destroyed 80% of the city. They destroyed houses. They killed women, children, elders.
للأسف هذا العنف بدأ من قبل قوات الاحتلال الأمريكية البريطانية، ولم يكن هنالك أمام الكثير من الناس الذين انتهكت حقوقهم إلا الدفاع عن نفسهم واختاروا طريق المقاومة.
It has a certain comparison with Srebrenica, which in the West is considered the ultimate crime.
People compared Fallujah after the second siege to Stalingrad.
Fallujah is 100 Guernicas.
I think that the sheer volume of firepower that was employed on Fallujah was intended to send a message and to teach a lesson. This is what happens to you when you defy the will of the new empire.
Ross, we've seen that trailer. You went to Fallujah as a soldier. You came back as an anti-war activist. What happened there that made you change completely?
Well, I was deployed to Iraq in June 2004, and right away it was clear to me that we weren't helping Iraqis. Rather than bringing them democracy and giving them a voice in their country, we were imposing something on them. We were imposing a certain political and economic system, and they had no say in it. And that was very confusing and conflicting to me. And then came the second siege of Fallujah in November 2004, and that was just terrible. I mean, Fallujah was a city of 300,000 people. 200,000 people had to become refugees. We killed anywhere between 3,000 and 6,000 civilians, the numbers aren't exactly clear, absolutely flattened a third of the city to the ground. I mean, right to the ground. And another third of the city had major structural damage. The remaining third had minor damage. I mean, it was just so obviously wrong, and I felt terrible about it. But at the same time, it was very confusing because the story that my command was telling us was that we liberated Fallujah and that we saved the civilians of Fallujah from the terrorists who had taken over their city. And that started me on this path of trying to understand what happened, trying to do research and to learn what journalists had to say about it, researchers had to say about it, and that's what the documentary is about.
Why is Fallujah's story is so important, while there is in the world so many stories about injustice? Why Fallujah particularly is so important, according to you?
Well, Fallujah became a very symbolic city in Iraq. First, because Fallujah became the strongest center of resistance against the US-led occupation of Iraq, and that was very inspiring to a lot of people who are oppressed by all different types of powers for all different types of reasons. So for the people of Fallujah to fight back in that way against empire was very inspiring. And then Fallujah was incredibly demonized in the US mainstream media. So for an entire different population, it became a symbol of terrorism. And the US military destroyed Fallujah in this very symbolic way so as to send a message. So I think to understand that story, I think it lets us know a lot about the world that we live in and power and struggle against power. And I think today Fallujah is still very symbolic because it's still a destroyed, struggling city with the health crisis that they have, and they still don't have very basic services like electricity and sanitation. People in Fallujah are still struggling today. So
coming from an ex-Marine, this is very powerful statement. And obviously, you're saying that a lot of you're not getting enough exposure. The story of Fallujah. I see you wearing the T-shirt, Justice for Fallujah Project, مشروع العدالة من أجل فلوجة. What is that project?
So this is a project that I started in 2010, and the initial goal was just to raise awareness in the United States because so few people know the truth about what happened there. And since then, we've done Remember Fallujah Week every November for the past 4 years. And now we're teaming up with a nonprofit organization named ISLA. And our goal now is to start doing fundraisers and to try to send reparations to Fallujah in the form of medical aid and medical equipment to try to help them with the public health crisis that they're having.
Who are you when you say we are trying to do? I know your story, Ross, you're here with us, but who's supporting this project?
The Justice for Fallujah project? There's not a consistent group of people. It's anyone who wants to come together at any particular time to work on something, whether it be a documentary film or to host an event with some public speakers or something like that. We work with all different types of people. People come and go when they can, as their life permits them to.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you said that the whole thing is not getting enough exposure. Are you getting any kind of cooperation from mainstream American media?
No, we're pretty much completely ignored. It's a tough pill for most Americans to swallow because nobody wants to hear that we created such terrible suffering in another
Even
country.
though the administration has changed from 2004.
Yeah, still. I mean, even Barack Obama, when U.S. forces officially withdrew from Iraq, he said it was a success. He said that we brought democracy to Iraq and that we can be proud of what we've done. But obviously, if you look at the facts on the ground, if you look at what people are dealing with in Fallujah today, I don't think there's anything to be proud of.
You have made a great documentary.
Thank you.
I really urge everybody to go on your website, Justice for Fallujah Project, and really see the documentary, which is online. It's available online. Don't you think that the documentary was a little bit too powerful? Like, I've seen the pictures of the babies, the kids with all the, disfiguration. You practically look at them and you don't believe that this is a human being. Do you think that you pushed it a little bit too much?
Well, I mean, I understand both sides of the argument, because if you shock people too much, you can turn them off. But at the same time, sometimes I feel like you need to shock people. And at the same time, this is the reality that Fallujans are forced to face every day. They can't change the channel. They can't turn away from it. So why should Americans be allowed to? So I see both sides of the argument, and I chose to go this way with it.
Do you have any support from your ex-fellow Marines soldiers?
Very little. There's one or two people who, one person is even involved. He's working with us. Another person remains in contact with me, but for the most part, I'm not liked very much in the people in my old military unit and in the military community in general.
Why do you think something that's so clear for you, that obviously that's the truth for you, because you named your documentary Fear Not the Path of Truth. So why do you think that the truth for someone is becoming so untrue for someone else?
Well, I've done a lot of research about this. I've done a lot of reading from what unembedded journalists have written about it, what academics have written about it. And I think the people from my old unit, they're content with the story that was told to them by our leaders. They don't feel any need to question it. And I think they feel like if they do question it, they're somehow dishonoring our friends that were killed in Fallujah. They're somehow, spitting on their graves. And I don't see it like that. I think the best thing I can do for them is to try to inform the American public and make sure that the next generation of Americans don't make the same mistakes that I did. So that's the way that I look at it.
What are your plans for the future?
Well, this year we're hoping to do some fundraisers, and we hope to be able to bring some medical equipment to the Fallujah hospital. We want to keep promoting the documentary. I'm also working on a book about my experience. So we have these projects going on.
Ross, thank you so much for being with us.
No, thanks for having me.
I hope that the truth, no matter what it is always out there for the public and for everyone to see it.
Me too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
مشاهدينا، نحن عم ننتقل لحظات مع الإعلان وبنرجع بنكفي.